And that's when Doug realized it wasn't soup after all.
Man, that guy is an idiot.
Welcome, everybody. Welcome back to the Uncannery. My name is Don.
And I'm Ron.
And we're talking about Doug, but
we are
he's not here.
Yeah, that's why we're talking about it. It's fun to talk behind his back. He's not here, and he will return, though, once again at home with babe in hand.
Mm-hmm.
And Godspeed.
Yeah. So just if you're listening out of order, Doug wasn't here last time either, but we didn't kick him out of the club completely. We just
no,
we're just waiting.
Yeah, this is a test, really, and I'd say it's going very well.
Welcome to another discussion, Ron. I was thinking today on my way home about all of the technology that we live with.
Oh man, yeah, cool technology.
Yeah. And I like gadgety stuff. Like it's one of the things I look for when I'm out shopping. I like to play around. I inherited it from my dad. My dad was a gadget guy.
Yeah.
So we had one of everything from infomercials on TV in the kitchen, and that was always fun. But gadgets are one thing, and gadgets are tricky and neat. But is there, like, what can you not live without? Like, what would be a deal breaker for you? What if we took away some piece of technology? What would
the first thing that comes to mind, I guess, is like the internet, right? Like, but it's not a gadget. That's a technological phenomenon. But like thinking about it, also, like, it would be kind of cool to not have the internet, maybe. Because I'm at least. Have you
ever not had the internet?
Yeah, I have memories of not having the internet. I am at least old enough to remember not having the internet. I think we got it sometime when I was around, like, I don't know, 6 or 7. And I think we were maybe even like later adopters of it than most people. But the real answer, something that I can't live without, like my computer, actually, like my PC, whether or not it had the internet, I kind of just love having like a hub. I'm thinking of like all the stuff I do, like, that's where I write. I type. It keeps our photographs. The hard drives have all my media, all of my music. I can play video games. Like everything is in that thing.
That was what I was going to ask, because that's been a shift recently, like geologically recently. Computers used to just be for work, and you would word process them on them. There were some kind of lame games that would happen, but then
like Doom.
But through the 2000s, then like they've kind of transformed into like a life hub.
Yeah, it's like an entire media center, right? Like pretty much all the media we watch. Like my computer is hooked up to my TV, right? Everything streams through there basically and stuff. So that would be a bummer. I always think like if there was like an earthquake and everything in our house was destroyed, I don't think I'd mind all that much. I mean, I would, obviously. It's a careless thing to say. That would suck. But the only thing I feel like is super essential is like my big giant 2005 PC tower, which I still have, because it's like 4 hard drives in there.
It's a liability though too, because I had a laptop stolen out of the back of my truck once.
Yeah.
And it was, trying to think when it was stolen. It would have been around like 2010, 11, something like that. So it had all of my photographs on it.
Yeah.
But it was kind of before most things were in the cloud.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
So whoever owns my 2010 laptop has all of the pictures of our honeymoon on it.
That's how I can find those so easily.
But kids these days won't ever know that danger, because everything is loaded to Facebook and to
I don't know. I don't
the cloud and iCloud.
I definitely use the clouds. I think I have like backups of most of that stuff, but that's not my preferred way to do it. Like I'd still rather just. Maybe that's the old fashionedness of me. I want to know that megabit file is somewhere on a hard drive disk.
Oh, I thought you were going to say the film.
No, like I would just want it all in one place. So I guess if my computer went away, That would be a pretty big change in my lifestyle. I don't really know how we would.
You have to read more.
Yeah, which wouldn't be so bad, I guess. That would also be good.
Yeah.
But then how would I talk to my friends on Discord?
So the reason that I was thinking about it on the way home is because I got a new car.
Yeah.
So
Nice and white.
I'm gonna call my car the thing I can't live without. But I think it's only because of where we live.
Yeah.
In California,
we're in car country.
We're very car country. The public transport system's not super well built out, and so if you want to ever leave your house, you need to have some kind of personal transportation.
Yeah, and that's a good answer too. But I think I'd kind of love to like not have my car because it would force me to like be around, like utilize public transportation that doesn't exist, or walk or ride a bike. You're right. That would definitely like strain.
It's one of the things I love about traveling. One of our favorite places to travel is London because you can literally go anywhere you want in London and just by just walking out the front door and walk a block down, take an escalator that goes forever, and then you're on a train.
Exactly.
It's awesome, and you can get anywhere you need to be in about a half hour.
I do get mad when coming back from a European city or London in particular, coming back home and being like, why the hell didn't is it too late? Like, can we fix our cities? Can we do what they did?
Right. So, and the kind of car I got was an electric vehicle.
I do. This is pretty cool.
So,
this is your first all electric vehicle?
It is my first all electric vehicle. Quite a change from the SUV that I used to drive. I used to get about 10 miles to the gallon. And so brave new world. But I thought I would tackle that one and charge it. And actually, while I was cleaning out my truck, going through the archaeology that is the center console, and the bottom layer was at least 10 years old, I found one of those disposable film cameras, and I have no idea what's on it. So it's why it's what I thought when you were talking about wanting to go back to
the actual print media.
So someday I'll get that developed, and I'll
you have to. That'd be sick.
Yeah,
the center console is an amazing space. I went through mine in my Jeep a while back, and I've had this car actually since high school. This was like my first car, and I guess my only car. And I found like old AAA maps. I remember like going to AAA and being like, I'm going to get a map for every neighboring county, so I'll never get lost. And those are just completely worthless now. Like, I probably used them once.
Yeah, my wife has a Thomas guide in her car.
A real
live physical Thomas.
I feel
guide,
like those you should be able to put those on eBay, and the Smithsonian will buy it off of you for its upcoming "The Way We Were" exhibit or something.
But actually, our topic today, what I want to talk to you about, what I brought to the table today is transportation.
Okay,
but like usual, my shtick, we've got to get in the magic time machine.
The magic time. Okay, so we're talking about like I'm trying to think. What's the oldest form of transportation? We're talking about dog-drawn sleds on the tundra.
No, that's not the oldest form.
Okay.
Yeah.
Canoes. Finnish toboggans.
No, just walking would be the oldest. Just to get on your feet.
Talking about the invention of feet.
But if we were to go back, I don't know, let's say, let's just pick a number. Let's say the 14th century. We were talking about the 14th century last time.
Lots of rats everywhere.
If we were just regular folk and we needed to get from one city to another, what would be our options?
We could walk. I take it, right?
Mm-hmm.
And we could hop on a pony or a horse. I guess probably not a pony. We'd probably break its back, but
right.
a horse.
A horse, if we were lucky enough to have one. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Our horse is big, like aristocratic items back in the day.
No, mostly agrarian. But if you were, the luxury of travel was limited to the upper classes. So if we were farm workers and we needed to get somewhere else, it would have been because we were working.
Okay.
But another way would be water. So back in the 14th century, canals and rivers and things like that. But Have we moved forward in our school bus, right? Our time machine, and we get up to the 19th century.
Okay,
so we
not
got
so far. Not so
Industrial Revolution starting, so early 1800s. Now, what kind of choices would we have? Again, we're just regular Joes, so we're not, super rich, but just regular people. What would be our options of getting around town?
1800s. We got wagons now.
There are wagons.
Coaches. Still drawn by horses, I suppose.
There are.
Do we have the first locomotive yet?
No.
When's the first locomotive?
Later.
Okay, so we're talking early 1800s. Maybe we've got when's the first moving sidewalk? I guess wagons is still more ships and boats and canals, right?
So wagons are all owned privately, though. We don't have
like
any,
a cab company.
No, just like you. You own a
I
wagon.
own a wagon. Okay,
Yeah,
a 4-door. This is my 4-door sedan wagon, and in hot red, cherry red.
First, just to finish out our conversation, first locomotive in England is built in 1814. But the first railway is opened in 1825.
Okay. Are those like public, or are they predominantly like industrial railways? Are they like taking coal from the Midlands down to the ports?
For both passengers and freight.
Okay.
So a combination, yeah. But it's that shift from private ownership of transportation to public ownership. So do you know what happened on July 4th, 1829 in London, England?
Definitely nothing to do with America. Probably every Englishman trying to ignore the word America.
Probably, yeah. That was the first horse-drawn omnibus. That was a public transportation system. It was one route. It went from Paddington in London to Bank.
Okay, so I think this word omnibus you used like I know what it means, but I think there was a great shift, almost a vowel shift at some point, where an omnibus to me is like a big collection of books in one book. What was the original omnibus?
So it's a carriage. It looks like a stagecoach,
okay,
but it's a little bit longer. So it's got multiple rows inside of it, rather than just the two facing that a stagecoach or a carriage would have. So probably 3 or 4 rows could hold. Most of them held up to 12 passengers. Some of them later on could get up to 22.
Okay,
pulled by 3 horses.
And what year was this?
1829.
1829. First big bus with how many horses?
3.
Why 3? That seems. Don't you want to even?
It's because you only need 2.
In case one dies.
You only need 2 to pull it, but if the route gets steep, they need the third one.
Okay.
So they always had at the start they had 3. As time marched forward, it would become a 2-horse system.
Okay.
But the route from Paddington, what I found was interesting. The route from Paddington to Bank, it ran 4 times a day. It cost £1 to take the omnibus, and it would take about 2 hours.
What's this distance in miles?
3.5. Because
I'm walking, man. I'm saving my shilling. I'm walking.
It's because it's going through the heart of London, down what was called the New Road. For our London listeners, is now Marylebone Road. But what if you wanted to take that same route today? It would take at least 2 buses, and it would take you at least 3 hours. So
okay.
It was faster back then using the horses than with the current transport system.
I knocked them too soon. They knew what was up.
You could get the underground. The underground requires 2 trains and at least 45 minutes. But,
and several gaps that you will potentially lose your life in, I suppose. But
you have to mind those.
Yeah.
So we have a population of London of about 1.5 million people.
Okay.
And we're using horses to transport freight. And now, starting 1829, we're transporting humans.
Is this big? Are people like, hell yeah, the omnibus is here. I'm living in a golden age.
It is. It takes off. By 1833, there's several routes. So it only takes a couple of years for this to expand.
Okay.
Yeah. But here's the question that I have is what is the motor that is driving the omnibus in 1829?
What, 3 horses?
3 horses. That's right. And what do you have to pay a horse?
Oh, this is the best part. Very little. I guess you're giving them oats, you're giving them hay, and a room to sleep, and lots of love and scratches on their neck.
That's it. So have you ever owned a horse?
No, I've never owned a horse. Horse. Horses are huge, man. Like, I think I would actually be. I've ridden horses. I think they're cool. I'm not like an anti-horse guy, but no, I want no business.
Do horses like you?
I don't know. Is that a thing?
It is. I think so, because I don't think horses like me, and I don't know why.
Yeah.
I'm such a likable person.
They're just always sort of like side-eyeing you.
They do. Yeah. Like dogs love me. Like, give me a dog, I'm good. But yeah, horses always are like not.
They're intimidated by your intelligence, Don.
Is that what it is?
It's most beasts feel this way towards you.
That's why Doug is. Yeah. Oh, we kid just because he's not here to defend himself.
So we need to feed the horses.
Exactly. How much do you feed a horse?
Oh, bushels.
40 pounds.
Okay.
40 pounds a day. The trouble with feeding a horse 40 pounds a day is what's the horse going to give you back at the end of that day?
Ooh, it's going to return you for your kindness with some big old piles of horse return. Horse dividends.
Dookie.
Yeah.
30 pounds of dookie.
Okay.
All right. So by about 1840, we've had about 300,000 horses working in London.
For 1.5 million people.
Yeah, it's about one horse for every 5 people.
All right.
Each producing 30 pounds of manure a day.
Sounds like my ex-wife.
Holy cow.
So there's a lot of horse waste, I'm taking.
There is a lot, yes. Up to 1,000 tons of horse waste a day.
So are we developing a sewer system? Is this something we can sweep into the gutter? Are we is this an opportunity for employment? I'm just an old horse sweep, like going up the what was it, the main way or
the new road?
The new road, right?
The new road, yeah. Well, kind of. So it does turn into that. It starts off with just piles, and it was why you always had to be careful crossing the street. Because there were so many horses that there was no way that the streets could be kept clean at all times.
Okay.
But there were contractors that were hired by the city to remove manure from the roadways, and they would then take that and sell it to farmers,
right,
who were raising hay the alfalfa that would then be fed to the horses.
So it's a perfect system, right?
Right. You see, and you just got to find that balance so that the horse production matches the fertilizer sale, matches the alfalfa production, matches the horse consumption, right? And
yes, exactly.
You just got to find the right magic balance so that the whole system works.
And they did.
No, they didn't.
So which did they have excess? I'm willing to bet.
Okay.
The one they didn't want excess of.
What do you think they had excess of?
They had excess horse crap.
They did. Do you know how much 1,000 tons of horse dookie, like what that looks like?
I can't tell you what 1,000 tons of anything looks like.
1,000 tons is a cube of horse dookie, 62 feet on each edge. So giant, and each horse produces up to 2 gallons of urine a day.
Oh right, yeah, we're not even talking about the wet.
So we got 300,000 horses excreting 2 gallons each. It's 600,000 gallons of urine.
Okay, this is the middle of the 19th century, right?
Yeah.
I find this very fun contrasting. This is supposed to be right, like the height of the British Empire, right? These are the most civilized people in the world. London is the most incredible city in the world, and it just reeks of horse piss and
poop.
shit.
Well, and but we don't ever we don't hear about that.
No, you're right.
None of the literature mentions, like, I can think of one instance in one book by Jane Austen where a character says, "Oh, the horses have been here." Right? But other than that, it's like it's so sanitized that we don't even realize. Like, of course, it was quaint because they were pulling, their buses with horses, and how nostalgic that must be. But the truth of the matter is it smells like poop.
Yeah, we
everywhere.
do that with a lot of our history, right? Like talking about like the Roman Empire and ancient Rome. It's supposed to be like super cool, all these marble statues and beautiful architecture, and then like some realist weirdo comes in and tries to dispel the rumor. He's like, they ate anchovies, they would have reeked. It's like they didn't bathe, except but once a month or something. And then it's like, thanks, man. I just wanted to live in fantasy Rome.
It gets so bad, actually, that in the 1850s, Benjamin Disraeli gives a speech in Parliament where he is pointing out in 1850 here's his quote. He says, "The cost of maintaining our streets in a state of moderate cleanliness is becoming ruinous. While the health effects of this ever-increasing accumulation cannot be ignored, we must ask ourselves if there is not a limit to the number of horses a city can sustain."
Well, okay. All right. So this is he's the prime minister, right? Once the prime minister is calling it out. So it's not just like a cosmetic problem. They're ringing alarm bells.
And in 1850, so there should be plenty of time to fix this problem because it's been noted. They actually were hired. There were private sweepers you could hire that would hang out on the corner, and if you wanted to cross the road and not have to walk through horse poop, you could pay the private sweeper to clear your way across the road.
Yeah, how has that not been depicted in a film or something, right? Like that sounds quintessentially English. Like paying your valet to scrub the asphalt in front of you.
Mm-hmm. And then we have another technological invention, I guess, that comes to England.
The fire hose. Now we're just pressure washing it all.
The fire hose existed back when the Great Fire took place in 1666.
A lot of good it did, though.
Yeah. No, the horse-drawn railway.
Okay.
All right. So
this is like a trolley car.
Yeah.
Okay.
So if you've been to Disneyland, the carriage that gets pulled down the center, that would be a horse-drawn railway. So we opened this up between London and Greenwich, and we need 12 horses per mile.
Yikes. That's getting worse
because each horse can only work for about 4 hours. So if you're going to have, even on the buses, it's 12 horses per mile because you can run a horse for about 4 hours and then you got to switch that horse out for the rest of the day. And they ran 16-hour days. But as we bring in the railway now, we're running longer distances. Requires more horses. And guess what? More horses produce
more waste.
They do. Yeah. Then in 1831, but then again in 1848, we have a cholera outbreak.
Oh.
And cholera, of course, is spread by
poop. Okay.
Poop when it comes into water.
Okay.
So we've got all of this horse waste in.
Luckily, it never rains in London.
That's right. And we have, 600,000 gallons of horse urine that are washing everything into the Thames. So do you know how much 600,000 gallons is?
No.
That's an Olympic-sized swimming pool every day of horse urine just being distributed across the streets of London.
I'll never look at the London Olympics the same way again.
So by then it's exceeding 50 pounds per year to remove horse manure per horse in the city of London.
Wow. Okay. So is that outstripping like how much it costs to even like feed them? It must be, right? Like,
right.
I'm taking it. Like,
it's getting close. It doesn't outstrip it until a few more years down the road.
And so all this kind of like Benjamin Disraeli was saying, this is all money that's falling on the local government, right? Like they're the ones in charge. The municipality has to take care of this, not the actual owners of the horses. They're not. Okay.
Right. So what can we do? Our streets are full of horse poop.
Right.
How would you solve the problem?
I mean, get all those orphan kids out of the door.
Oliver.
Yeah. I mean, I don't like, so my answer earlier, you kind of, I feel like already swept it away. I was like, hey, this is free fertilizer. This must be fantastic. Like, this is not a useless resource, right? Mm-hmm. But it sounds like we are already using that and we're outpacing, but I guess you have to move it also, right? So,
right.
And I take it the horses are moving it to the Midlands or wherever, right?
They are, and there's another limitation here because the hay and the alfalfa the hay the horse needs for bedding is increasing the waste, but the alfalfa that they're eating has to be grown somewhere. So it takes about 1 1/3 acres of land to grow the alfalfa for one horse. And we've got at least 300,000 horses that are working in London, probably more than that now. We've moved halfway through the century. There's not enough land in the surrounding areas within 100 miles to feed the horses that are right. So the overproduction of waste in the city has nowhere to go because the farmlands can't take it. The farmers are buying as much as they can. So a couple of technologies come along. The first is invented by a guy named Joseph Whitworth, who creates the first large-scale mechanical street sweeping system.
Sick.
Yeah.
I'm gonna imagine this is like a big Zamboni, like just going around with the spinning wheel on the top, and the guy can just sort of.
So it's got rotating brushes. It clears a 7-foot swath of street at once. It can clear 1,500 yards of street in 1 hour, so almost a mile, not quite, accomplishing the work of 20 men in 1 hour.
Okay.
So pretty good. Guess how it gets pulled down the street?
Oh, no. The horses. Was Whitworth like, look, I tried experimenting with cats, with dogs, but they ain't got it in them. You need 45 dogs or 3 horses. What do you want, Governor?
So he can clear the street, but it's adding to the complication because you've got more horses that need to clear the streets. So
bringing in even more horses. Okay, this is starting to the sheer viciousness of this cycle is starting to kind of rear its head. I'm starting to get where the prime minister was all.
So then we need to invent processing plants because the wet manure is obviously heavy to move and more has more volume. So it's a more difficult task to get it to the farmers. So we start processing inside the city, which can reduce the 1 ton of manure down to like a 20-pound block.
Are we talking like sort of like we're taking it into a big machine that is like a trash compactor and we're crushing it? We're pulling all the liquid out of it.
It's like a dehumidifier.
Okay.
We're making little manure nuggets. But guess where all that moisture goes that is evaporated from the manure? It goes into the air.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
So if you live next to a manure processing plant, guess what it smells like?
Mad now, right?
Well, so the city is just not a good place to be.
Yeah. Right. So like everyone's taking their holiday in London, and they're like, "Good God, Elizabeth, look at the streets." and then the tourism board's like, "Okay, we'll clean the streets, but we need to make like waste plants to take all the waste." And now they're pumping the sulfur and everything into the atmosphere, and now everyone's like, "Good God, Elizabeth, the air in London is terrible." Mm-hmm. Okay, so
same thing is happening in New York.
Oh, okay, all right.
New York is about 1/10 the size of London in the time.
Okay,
same thing is happening in Boston, but the trouble is that these cities continue to grow, and as the city grows, there's a greater dependence on horses to provide transportation for people and cargo. So it's.
Is it sort of like an often overlooked? I feel like when we're learning history and we're talking about like the Industrial Revolution, it seems like a very linear and then they started developing these machines and some proto automation, and then people moved into cities and everything like moved very like sort of linearly and the way you would expect, and it evolved, and now we got PCs, but there must have been like vestiges of the old world that were sort of like like horses, right, that are not catching up or evolving at the same rate as the other society changing things, right?
Right, and it's because society has to realize at some moment that an evolution is possible.
Yeah,
and up to this point, like horses have been the primary I don't know, mechanism of work, I guess.
Right.
Since like anyone can remember, like literally thousands of years. So like, why are we going to move away from the horse? We just need to figure out how to make the horse work in this industrial environment that we've created.
Right. You can get your steam donkey to like, process some textiles, but you still need your normal donkey to walk to, or, pull people to the office. Right.
Right. So there are some ideas coming along to try to adjust for the maintenance of these animals. So stables, we were laughing, I think earlier today, but about big stable. But they were big. Like there were 5-story stables in Chicago.
It's like parking garages, right?
With vertical elevators to move horses and to move hay up and down. All right, then we have like everything. We're going to have equine influenza. So
sure.
Just like the bird flu is affecting egg prices today, when all of our cities are dependent on horses and all of a sudden the horses get the flu.
Bad day.
Bad thing. The whole city stops. There actually were men in Boston that had to pull the streetcars.
Honey, they just called me. I'm a horse today.
And then, but again, the problem is the waste. Berlin, an engineer in Berlin comes up with the idea of pneumatic system to remove waste.
Okay, a vacuum.
Basically, a vacuum runs pipe underground, and it can move the waste from one place to another.
Does he ever get to employ this, or is this merely theoretical? I'd love to know what the crap vacuum did in Berlin.
The proposed system would require 87 miles of underground tubing. So this is if it were employed in London, and consume 4,000 horsepower of steam energy. So it's using a steam engine at 4,000 horsepower. So not actually 4,000 horses. But the calculations showed only processed 22% of the current waste production, a cost exceeding the entire city's annual budget.
I'd love to be at that meeting and they're like, well, Mayor, we could just build the city of the future.
But it still won't take all the crap away. It's just like 20%. Yeah. The best system came out of Paris. They had a rail-based system where they had night soil men who...
it's a great band name. The Night Soil Men.
Which has been a job for a long time. Most prior versions of Night Soil Men would come and remove human excrement from cesspits.
Oh, okay.
But the Paris system involved a night system where they would come in and scoop up piles that had been made during the day, and they were moved out of the city by rail rather than by cart. But that still was only able to handle 40% of the daily accumulation. So we have this like less than half. Right.
So everyone's on this though, right? Like this is a worldwide problem, or at least a Western metropolitan issue.
Right. And all of the cities are here. Like, so Paris is here, Berlin is here, London is here, Chicago is here, New York is here, Boston's here. Like everybody has the same problem.
Okay. And and all the brains, best and brightest.
You got all the brains in the room. Somebody should, like, this should be a fix. Like, this is the time to fix it.
Yeah.
Right. It's been a problem. I mean, it was noted in 1850, and now the meeting we're talking about is taking place in 1894.
Okay, yeah.
So it's been
half a century,
and you can imagine in 1850 they noticed there was a problem.
Yeah,
like how big the problem must be in 1894. We have interestingly since 1850 solved the problem of human waste in the cities.
Okay, what's the solution? Like, are there treatment plants already? We just have sewers?
Sewers.
Okay.
Yeah, so there were sewers in the early 1800s, but they all just dumped into the Thames.
Right.
And then there was a heat wave in 1858, and the Thames didn't flow as much as a heat wave and a drought. So the Thames didn't flow, and everything was fermenting on the surface. The accumulated human waste on the banks was 6 feet deep. They had to cancel Parliament because Parliament couldn't stand the smell. Queen Victoria had to cancel her river cruise.
No,
Yeah.
not the Victoria River cruise.
So they hired an engineer named Bazalgette who invented the sewer system that is all enclosed, and rather than just dumping open sewer into the Thames, is taken away to treatment plants, and it's actually still in use today.
Same ones?
Yeah.
The ancient treatment plants of the Thames River system.
It's only 150 years.
That's old enough to get a YouTuber to go down there and film some weird videos, you know.
So I think that a lot of the infrastructure of it has been replaced, but it runs along the same route. So
That's cool.
Yeah. So we've solved the human waste. We realize is a problem,
But this is because you can tell people where to put their waste, right?
and it is tougher to tell a horse.
Yeah.
That is true.
They're very inconsiderate.
Indeed. So what do we do, right? So if we can't figure out a way to mechanically remove the horse manure from the cities that is being accumulated by the bounty of horses that we need to do our work, how can we cut it back? How can we trim it down a little bit?
I just figured it out.
Oh, okay.
I can't believe no one thought about this.
Oh.
Why can't they make like some sort of big horse diaper? Like, obviously it's not a diaper.
Somebody still has to empty it. It doesn't take away the waste.
Then we throw it in the new sewer. If we're already like throwing everyone's waste down the Thames, we have this big net behind every horse. At the end of the day, throw it in the Thames.
I think they actually do that in New York City today. I think the carts they have in Central Park that you can. I think they have little like baskets under the tail to like catch your basket.
Man, I should have been a 1894.
You could have been the hero.
Yeah.
Change the trajectory of our entire.
Yeah. Can we stop the bus here and leave me here for a second? I feel like my life will take a more productive route.
So Chicago comes up with the idea.
Okay.
The Chicago delegation proposes strict horse licensing system with population caps and mandatory waste collection requirements.
Yes, this would. I'm all for it. This would work, right?
Mm-hmm.
So you're saying the people who own the horses and the companies that are running these public transportation, routes and things, they're responsible. We're putting a limit on how many horses they can have, so we're just trying to minimize the problem. So we're like, okay, no, we're stopping growth, right? No more horses.
And you're artificially making it more expensive to own a horse by putting a licensing fee on it.
Right.
So you wouldn't have too many horses.
Encouraging them
to
than
you would need. Be more careful with how many horses you are using.
Right. And divest of unnecessary horses.
That's right.
Okay. But that doesn't sound like it'll work.
So from the proceedings of the conference, the answer was the mathematics of commerce render population caps impossible. Each horse removed creates an economic opportunity that demands 2 more horses be added. So we can't regulate our way out of this crisis.
Right, because they're too essential, right, to what
Right, if you just take the horse away, the work that horse was doing remains, but there's nobody there to do it.
Yeah, you can't just employ more Boston guys to do what the horse did.
Right. Yeah. So we can't regulate it through.
And Boston guys also just shit on the street, so it's not going to help either.
Vienna also has a regulation to propose. Vienna says they are just going to create stable zoning laws.
Okay.
And stable meaning like a place to hold a horse, not like not changeable.
They kind of do that in London today, right? They've got last time I went to London, the taxi guy was really angry and just complaining to us about the zoning laws that they have in different parts of London and what kind of cars you can drive there. Otherwise, you have to pay a tax, right? So,
right. If you go through the center parts of the city, you have to pay additional fees
unless you're in a EV or hybrid vehicle, right?
I don't know that.
I'm pretty sure
I could drive to London. I have an EV now.
Yeah, exactly. That's why he was complaining, because he was like, they're trying to get us to buy these cars. Well,
so Vienna's idea is also not doesn't work out. So the Viennese City Planning Board says that our attempt to regulate stable locations has resulted in horses traveling further to reach their work sites, thus requiring more horses to compensate for the increased transit time. Each regulation seems to worsen the very problem it tends to solve.
Is this what the island of Dr. Moreau is about? Are they trying to like create a better horse? I could see someone being like, if only we could make a better horse, like a leaner, quicker, smarter being.
Mm-hmm. I think this is an interesting... both of these are historically interesting components for me, though, because it's like the idea that we can regulate a solution to a huge societal problem, right? And we always turn to our politicians and as regulators to like, well, change the law so that this doesn't happen.
If we tweak the parameters of what's acceptable, then behavior will change, or new solutions will have to be discovered, right?
But in this particular case, the horses are pooping regardless of licensing fees or zoning laws.
Like how many stables there are.
It doesn't. There's no way to stop. You can't bet the cork in the horse.
Right.
There was.
Did they try that?
there were discussions about changing what horses were fed,
right,
to see if it would reduce the volume of waste. But I don't think they ever.
Let's give them eels. What does that do?
So here's the final assessment from the committee. This says, we have examined 53 distinct proposals from mechanical street cleaners to underground waste networks. The hard truth is none of these solutions, even in combination, can match the pace of waste accumulation in our growing cities.
Dang. So they said it's time to throw in the towel. We're giving up on Western civilization.
That's right, and so that's why civilization collapsed.
The Chinese can have it. Yeah.
So Colonel John Howe, British railway engineer, delivered an unscheduled address, and he said, "Gentlemen, we have spent 2 weeks attempting to solve the wrong problem. Our crisis is not one of waste management, but of dependence on animal power at a scale that has become unsustainable. We must look beyond the horse."
To the stars. I'm proposing we colonize Phobos.
And that's why the British were the first on the moon.
Yeah, exactly.
In 1895.
We've got a great alternate history sci-fi novel series here, Don. No, but he's right? Like, and this is starting to sound quite frankly, chillingly relevant.
What? What do you mean? We don't use horses like this anymore. We don't have 62-foot cubes of horse manure being produced in our city every day.
Thank God we made the horse extinct to solve the problem. And then invented the automobile, which I'm assuming was the solution to this, right? But the one that no one could foretell, right?
Right. So the solution is already in play because Carl Benz has patented his automobile, his vehicle powered by a gas engine in 1886. But it's not in any kind of wide use.
Like no one's got one in their shed, in their stable.
And the ones that are being produced are super expensive. So it's not something that could feasibly, economically replace the horses.
Yeah. Right. Was there anyone at this conference being like, let's just wait 25 years and see if we're all still here? But like they must have been at least aware, right? But again, like easy for us to say, just wait for the car, idiots.
Because we know it's coming.
Yeah, we know it's coming, but they don't, right? And they don't even know if it would be adopted, right? Or adaptable to like public use, right? Maybe it is just a thing that like the Queen, instead of going on the River Thames, she takes a car holiday.
So Benjamin Woods, in his closing address, says, "We depart without solutions. Yet perhaps this very failure is necessary. Only by accepting the impossibility of our current path can we open our minds to radical alternatives that we cannot yet imagine."
Dang.
Yeah. And then they cross the street through the horse back to their hotels.
Yeah. Hit the pub together. Said, what do you guys think of Africa? Anyone interested in that place? Okay. So they have to throw in the towel. They give up and they just business as usual, right? Everyone goes back. The horse remains a staple of life in London until
and all the other cities. New York comes back and they implement an emergency night soil only policy, which restricts horse traffic during daylight hours in Manhattan.
Okay.
But everybody realizes that doesn't solve any of the problems. It just makes the nighttime the problem because now you got twice as many horses at nighttime on the same streets. London introduces stable ventilation systems, even though that doesn't do anything for the problem. Then there is a problem in, I'm checking the date, 1895. We have a winter temperature inversion that happens.
Yeah.
And so there's
Also very common today.
a cloud of aerial manure dust that hangs over the city for 9 days.
I'm never going back to London, Don.
And hospital wards overflow with respiratory cases
Jeez.
because of this. And so it was a moment when people realized this wasn't just a waste management, this was a health crisis.
Right.
And this is a public health crisis that it transforms the debate from just being about waste management to being about how this is a direct threat to our human health. So the Manhattan Street Railway Company declares bankruptcy despite increasing ridership. So it's not because they don't have customers, but it's because they're spending so much money removing the horse poop,
Right.
and they can't make money. The London's Metropolitan Board of Works also projects bankruptcy within 3 years if the waste management costs continue to rise. And so by 1898, everybody's doom and gloom that it's reached a point where the sustainability of horse-based transport is financially it's unsustainable.
Right.
Yeah. So what can we do? What's going to happen?
Oh, well, World War I first.
No, not World War I first.
Spanish-American War.
Berlin does it.
What's Berlin doing?
Berlin begins a large-scale trial of electric trams.
Oh, okay.
And so people look at the electric tram. It does require a significant infrastructure investment, but it entirely eliminates the waste problem. So look at the electric tram, go down our street, and look, there's no poop on our street, right? So the mathematics become compelling because, yes, it's an expensive investment in infrastructure to start.
Right.
But once it's in place, you've eliminated the crippling problem that is threatening to bring London and all the other cities to a poop entrenched standstill.
And I presume this is only feasible because of advancement in technology, right? That not only do they, can they now harness electricity, but they can harness it at the capacity that they could power these railways.
Right. And they're using it to turn motors to make trams go forward. Paris tries something with compressed air buses. I don't know how that would work. Seems like that would, you could go
like the car we made in Boy Scouts, like the pine car derby.
Then you got to get out. Okay, everybody, pump on the. And then in London, we start using motor wagons. So, and then, of course, in 1908, another famous American figures out a way to produce those automobiles invented by Carl Benz in a more efficient and cost-effective way, and that's
Mr. Ford.
With the Model T. So just waiting about 10 years, the horse problem seems to resolve because now there's a widespread adoption of motor vehicles to take that place. And that's why the world is so much cleaner today.
Yeah. Thanks, horses. Thanks for stepping to the side and letting the incredibly clean automobile take your place. But this is what I was saying earlier, right? I can see maybe why this grabbed your imagination.
Who doesn't like talking about horse poop?
No, exactly. It's fun. It's body. And it is kind of astonishing to me that I've never heard about this until now. This seems to me like an important story in the sort of narrative of the advancement of human civilization, right? Like it's not so clean, and there are constantly issues that arise, and sometimes, seemingly civilization-threatening issues and health crises, right? Mm-hmm. And obviously, I'm seeing a clear parallel here between the current climate crisis, right? It seems like we're kind of back in our city is full of horse poop world.
How do you see that?
Instead of the horse poop, what if the horses were farting? And what if the horses were steel beasts? And what if everyone had one or more of these in their stable attached to their house, right? Mm-hmm. Obviously, the pollution created by fossil fuels is creating both health crises and weather crises and ecosystem crises the world over, right? Mm-hmm. And it sounds like similar to 1894, right? This big conference. We've had several of these, right? We have climate conferences between nations to try and address this problem, and it would seem thus far we have unsuccessfully addressed it.
And I think I'd like to talk about why. Like, what do you think why that is? So in 1894, at the conference that we've been talking about, there was a representatives of 43 cities from across the world talking about the manure crisis. In 2015, the Paris Climate Conference, we had 196 nations there, so 3 times as many.
Yeah.
In 1894, the New York City air quality crisis, we had 1,200 deaths from bad air.
Yeah.
Right. 2015 global air pollution deaths was 4.2 million.
Right.
Right. So the problem is way bigger than the problem was 120 years ago.
Yeah.
But why are we choosing to not solve the problem when we have the technologies to do it, right?
Yeah. Well, it sounds like a similar on the face value. This is not my ending hypothesis, but on face value, it would seem like there's a similar reliability or we're stuck on our reliability on fossil fuels as energy, right? Like that, we cannot find cheaper sources of energy. And yeah, we've got wind turbines, we've got solar cells and batteries, right, to provide those clean energy sources. But thus far, we have not seen the necessary or requisite investment in those technologies to power Berlin, right? We right. Like the horse is still got to be there. The automobile is still going to be there. And, not even just the automobile, but fossil fuels are utilized in the power generators that power almost all of our cities, et cetera, right? So it seems like we haven't yet taken that step to make that infrastructure switch or investment that you said Berlin took back in, 1895 or when was it?
1894. Yeah.
94, yeah.
And it's that infrastructure piece that is the stumbling block, I think, because if we go back to 1850 when Benjamin Disraeli first noticed the poop problem, there was a resistance to wanting to change because no one could fathom that there would be a world where the horse was not the primary mover of goods and people. And I think what you're saying, like we are also living in a world where we cannot imagine a future that doesn't depend on fossil fuel. But I wonder how much of that resistance is manufactured by corporate interests in maintaining a level of profitability in a system that is polluting the world, where if we would switch those to investing in cleaner energies, right, that at some point it would be cheaper, just how running a car is cheaper than paying for a horse, because you don't have to feed a car as much.
No,
and the maintenance is cheaper, but when that switch was happening in the early 20th century, there was resistance to, there were jobs in hay storage, there were jobs in manure processing, there was jobs in fertilizing sales, there's jobs in farming.
The guy driving the Zamboni.
So there's lots of employment that is behind that, but it doesn't mean, like, it wouldn't make sense for us today to say, well, a solution to the climate crisis would be to go back to horses.
Right. Exactly.
Right? You always have to take that step forward, and that step forward is an economic opportunity as long as you can let go of that opportunity you currently have.
And you've landed on my hypothesis I was alluding to earlier too, which is I think it's predominantly a corporate one, right? Which is right now, if you are ExxonMobil, if you are Shell, if you're BP, right, your money comes from taking a free resource from the ground and turning it into gold, essentially, right? And whereas a lot of these companies do make investments in other forms of energy, right? Wind turbines and, et cetera. But it's very minimal. And, because they say, look, until we receive returns on those investments similar to the kinds of profits ExxonMobil expects to make based on, all the oil that we've been extracting, we're not going to make that transition, right? And that's just because those companies are not, like the big stables of yore, right? They're not very interested in having to completely switch their entire business model when the current one seems to be working just fine.
Depends how you measure it.
Yeah,
right. It's working just fine in their profitability, like you say. Yeah. But if you look back at the transition from horse to motor vehicle, it looks like about 70% of London stable owners and horse industry transitioned to motor vehicle services by 1910. So
it didn't take that long, right?
No.
Yeah.
So and they found success in the new technology. So it wasn't something that yes, it was a change and a transition, but it wasn't something it didn't obliterate.
Right. It wasn't entirely destabilizing or anything like that.
Yeah.
And you were saying earlier, that the people of 1894 had a hard time, envisioning this world, right? How they could be unshackled from, the manacles of the horse. And I'm not sure that is the problem today, though, right? I do think a lot of people can imagine a world, right, that is less reliant on fossil fuels. We've done this before in more recent memory too. Leaded gasoline was a huge public health crisis issue that doesn't exist anymore, right? But
through regulation, but it didn't take away gasoline.
Exactly right. It didn't require the sort of massive transformation from these sorts of powerful companies that this problem obviously will require, right? But like you said, we've got the technologies, right? I think there's a lot of public will. We just sort of seem to lack, the ability to budge these large groups, right?
That and it's a global issue, right? And if you owned a horse and we could pile up the manure that your horse produced outside your house, you would say, "Oh, that's gross," and I don't want that in front of my house.
Yeah.
Right. But when you're driving your car down the street and the pollution doesn't follow you, it and
it's invisible,
right? Yeah. And it disperses and it spreads, and so it's not easy to quantify how much effect me as an individual is having on the environment. Where if I could watch my horse poop, I would be able to. And it's also
you gave us some figures about the number of people who die from air pollution, right? Was it last year or recently?
2015, 4.2 million.
Yeah. Those are also deaths where people don't just, oh my gosh, my lungs, right? Those are multitudinous diseases, and it's hard to link those to, right? The actual quality of air, right? Even though those are probably the most likely sources of those diseases, right? So it is just it's a harder thing for a normal person to sort of see and feel, right? Especially when you're saying hey, your car, the thing that you rely on to get to work, because this is how we've designed our society so that everyone is super far apart, at least in America, right? And the public transportation isn't really there the way it could be. It's hard to say these are parts of the problem, right? The electricity that everything runs on, right? It's not even I don't really like putting the onus on people who own cars to be hey, switch to an EV, that's going to fix the problem. It's not, because your EV is still drawing electricity from a power plant that is utilizing fossil fuels, right? It requires not just personal change, it requires societal change. Right?
And I wish that our society would support that change faster. I hope that it doesn't get to the point that the 1894 conference arrived at, which is basically we can't solve this problem. And, you know, from our perspective, like you pointed out, like we can say, well, it wasn't that bad because, you know, a few years later, a new technology came along and solved that problem for them or changed the problem to an invisible one. And, but if we get to another point where we can't solve the problem anymore, like that's kind of scary for me.
I do think there are a lot, this is an issue I used to kind of volunteer my time and my activist energy for a long time. And I do a little less now than I used to, but it's something I feel fairly informed about. But I do think there are a lot of people who believe, oh, we just need to wait for the next car to be invented, right? There will be a technological solution. We'll have, you know, nuclear
cold fusion.
Exactly. Right. And these technologies will save us. But the only problem is like, those are really big ifs, right? To hedge our bets on, right? Like the horse people were lucky that Mr. Ford showed up to help them out so well. And this present problem maybe seems a little bit larger and more all encompassing than the status of the really rotten streets in London.
Well, thank you, Ron. Appreciate talking poop with you today.
Yeah, I really wasn't expecting that coming over here, Don. And now that I know that's on the table, I'm going to be a little bit more reticent to show up for these conversations. But I can't say that it wasn't entertaining and it wasn't a fun time.
Well, watch your step on the way home.
Thank you, Don.
Thank you.